Howdy. Despite the fact that I've told everyone that I believe bad professors answer questions that no one has asked, I'm going to go ahead and answer some questions nobody's asked. I kind of thought I might just try and distill my two or three of my favorite lectures. The goal of this lesson today is to define the terms, or to get you started defining these terms for yourself, and to get you to demonstrate how in your own life usage defines grammar. That's a big concept there, how usage defines grammar. We talk about grammar a lot, but I don't think we really agree on what it means, or we don't really think about what it means. And I want you to think about some terms. First off, I want you to think about language. But I'd like you to think of some questions, or think of the answer to some of these questions. But what is the difference between a language and a dialect? The difference between a language and a dialect is essentially an army and a navy. And I say that without a lot of irony. Steven Pinker, in the book, I believe his book, The Language Instinct, says the same thing. It's true. If you think about it, why is it that someone from Mexico can sit down and have a conversation with someone from Italy? The Italian speaking Italian and the Mexican speaking Spanish, but within 30 minutes they're having a conversation with very little problems, each speaking their own native language, but they're speaking different languages. Why is it someone from Sweden and someone from Finland can do the same thing? Sit down and in a very short time be having a conversation, each speaking their own native languages. And yet go to China, someone who speaks Cantonese has no idea what Mandarin's about. And neither of them would understand a word of Fujianese or Minanhua. The dialects in China are pretty much mutually unintelligible. But what is it that makes something a grammar or a language, and what makes it a dialect? And it's really a political distinction. And that's something I want you guys to learn. I want you to think about that. Listen to AM radio sometime. I don't advise it for long periods of time, but I used to work on a farm, drive a tractor, and that's all you got. Talk radio really has set the boundaries of the culture war squarely in language. And to be honest, our political parties are both using language as a battleground, and one party's doing much better than the other. And you might be surprised which party is really better at manipulating language. All right, I promise to blow your mind along this in getting to the lesson plan of how does usage define grammar? How does usage define language? How, and there's really no one in charge of our language. We don't have a King's English like they do or the Queen's English, or like they have in France, they have l'Académie Française, where there's actually people setting rules for how you use language. It's never been that way in the United States. We do not have a national language. But think about how come you pronounce Kansas, Kansas, and Arkansas, Arkansas, and the river, the Arkansas, Arkansas River, in Kansas gets called the Arkansas River, and it changes its name when it crosses the border to the Arkansas River. What's going on there? Ever wonder that? Well, the thing is, Kansas was actually never called Kansas until fairly recent times. The Native Americans who lived here called it Kansa. That was named for the Native Americans who lived here, the Kansa Indians. And who wrote down their names, you ask? Good question. Actually, it was written down by French monks, like the Benedictines. I used to teach at Benedictine College. Benedictine monks, also some other monks of other stripes, but it was monks, largely from France. And the Louisiana Purchase, at one point, all this land, Kansas, used to belong to France. Well, in French, they add unnecessary S's to the end of all their words. So, Kansas, we pronounce Kansas if you were a French speaker. You don't get French speakers in Kansas anymore, so when they looked at the map and saw Kansas, they pronounced it Kansas. However, in Louisiana, down there where they have more French speakers down there, they know how to pronounce a French word. So they saw Arkansas and Arkansas. That's how they pronounce it. I guess the point I want to make here is that choices about language and dialect and what we tend to call grammar. We need to be more precise when we talk about grammar. Because when teachers tell you that one grammar is not acceptable, what are they really talking about? Is it sentence mechanics or is it dialect? Now, in the case, if you did the reading and you read up on Stokely Carmichael, Kwame, I think his name is now, and the Students' Rights to Learn Language, it came out of the Civil Rights movement in the 60s. It was really a good idea at the time. Scientists were going into urban centers where African Americans lived and coming out with the conclusion that they could not speak any language, that they had no refined language, and that was entirely untrue, unfair, and racially and culturally biased. The truth is, if you look at African American vernacular English, or I prefer the term actually Black English vernacular, because it's not really about, well, it's just a better term. Black English vernacular has a set of rules it follows, and you can convey information grammatically in much fewer words in some cases than you can in mainstream U.S. English. For example, the habitual be. We be playing basketball. That means you typically, but irregularly over time, play basketball. You can't say that in English, mainstream U.S. English, without saying we typically but irregularly play basketball. We be playing basketball. That strange way that the to-be verb acts in Black English vernacular conveys actual content, information. I want to get across that we need to define terms, and I'll show you one of the links I put you to. These terms here you should be in command of. And I'm going to use a couple of the terms today. Actually, this needs to be updated, doesn't it? Oh, there it is, shibboleth. I thought I updated that. Language, not just the words we use, our pronunciation, our grammar, our dialects, they act as a shibboleth. And that's one of my favorite words from the Old Testament. Old Testament is rocking sometimes. That story, if you want to go to the Bible and look it up, it involves lots of bloodshed. I think 40,000 people dying. There's a link to it in today's lesson plan, the blog post and on the lesson plan. Shibboleth is used a lot in IT computer context to establish who has rights to access data and who doesn't have rights to access data and resources. Shibboleths were used in World War II. They used to soldiers couldn't tell Germans with really good English from American soldiers. They were worried about spies. They'd go watch the Inglorious Bastards. One shibboleth used commonly in World War II was the baseball, who won the last World Series. Because even if you didn't like baseball, you heard enough about it from your colleagues and co-soldiers. So anybody in the American military would know who won the last World Series. But a German wouldn't. It was a way to tell one group from another group, the in group from the out group, based on insider information. It turns out that even the simplest questions of dialect are loaded. I'm going to stop this now, and in the next video I'm going to start talking about the prompt. I want to look at that again, make sure, force you to look at it. Oh, I want to point out though that I'm giving you this link to a doodle. You click on this, and you can check every time you're available. Suzanne's already in there. Thank you, Suzanne. But every time you might possibly be able to see me, click yes. If you're not sure, if you had to, click maybe. That's more than maybe. And then no if it's absolutely not possible. And then check everyone that's possible to work, even if you don't want it, but if it could work, check it in there, and then I can find out when are the best times for me to be around to do Skype, to do conferences.